Welcome to Who's Right, What's Left. I'm your co-host, Melissa Reinhart.
And I'm Matt Neubauer. We're here to discuss some of the important issues that face Americans today and have some civil discourse and banter between friends and parties.
Who's right?
What's left?
Welcome back, everyone, to Who's Right.
What's left?
We want to thank you, the listeners, for dropping in and listening to our banter about the post-election. That was our most dropped episode to date. So,
and
boom.
Do love the comments on Facebook too that keep things going.
Absolutely. 178 views, listens. So thank you very much. We are growing the audience organically. We do have plans to grow this even more in 2025. But until then, please stick with us. Share this with everyone. Share our Facebook page. You know, we're on YouTube, Spotify, iTunes. Please share this with everyone. We need all the help we can get. And if we ever needed more civil discourse, it's probably right now. So why are you smiling and laughing already?
Why now? Why?
Oh, Lord. Anyway,
here we go.
Here we go. So I pitched to Matt, because of the success of our last episode, let's talk about our political wish list for 2025. And what this ended up being, what for me, when I was getting ready for this today, was really kind of highlights of different things we've talked about. Go figure, right? A nice wrap up. But also, too, there are a lot of disgruntled people in the country right now, and a lot of overzealous people in the country right now. So I think if we both talk about what we personally find, hopeful about 2025.
Yeah, what we're looking forward to.
Right, what we're looking forward to. There's been a lot of talk too about the first 100 days that Trump is in office. And a lot of promises have been made and whatnot. So anyway, Matthew, did you want to start off what your political wish list is for 2025? Or
Sure. I'm looking forward to, I hope, a little dismantling or slowing down of the military-industrial complex. And I know that that's not...
that's a small endeavor.
It is. But, the last term, we had very little military action overseas. And that's one of the things I don't think he gets enough credit for. We really did have a nice, quiet 4 years for a while. And that is, but that is going to take a hit in the economy. So, peace is expensive. So when you wind that down, and these, these military companies reel back, their suppliers reel back, everybody tends to reel back. But I hope that is countered by, and we are due for a correction of the economy in a recession. But I hope that'll be in tandem with lowering of energy costs, lowering of transportation costs, fuel and things like that, which should bring costs down all the way across the board. So that's what I'm looking forward to. The tariff situation, the promises have been made about that, and there's been a lot of big talk about that. But the last time those have been imposed, it hasn't been, they haven't been huge tariffs like folks are talking about. They've been little trinkety suppliers for manufacturers and things like that. And we really didn't see much of a change in the economy because of that the last time. So I'm curious what will be done this time, if we're going to double down on that and make those stronger than we did last time, or what we're going to do.
Superficially in my own life, I do a lot of online shopping. I think I've mentioned that before, and I'm like, so many of those goods come from China. And so I'm like, well, what's going to happen with that marketplace? And that's just one place to go shopping online.
What is?
Right?
Yeah.
Not to mention the stores that you physically walk into. What are those shelves going to look like?
But looking at big picture, and it's, growing pains sometimes, tariffs are partially responsible for why we have Toyota, for example. I read an article on Toyota trucks, and Toyota was just banging back in the day, and then we had some tariffs imposed, some import restrictions. And so how did Toyota respond? They built a factory in the U.S. So now we build Toyota here. We build Nissan trucks are built in Tennessee. We've got a Honda Accord plant over in Marysville. And not to bash an American company, but I would venture to say, I've not done any research on this, but I bet you Honda puts food on more Midwestern plates than General Motors does.
You know, that just brought back a memory from the first time I ran for office. I ran for Perry Township trustee, and I was walking the Huntertown Days Parade, and my mom was driving my Honda CRV, and someone yelled from the side of the street, you know, you don't have an American car. And I actually said, it was assembled in Kentucky.
Yes, it is. It is an American car.
And I was very careful to make sure, you know, I knew that. And, but I thought, wow, it just, yeah, I agree with you on that.
Meanwhile, the irony of that is I drive a Chevy Silverado, and we've got a plant right here in Fort Wayne. My truck was built in Canada. Now,
right.
For what reason that made its way onto the dealership 20 minutes from the factory?
Reasons unknown.
I have no idea. I don't know how that works, but.
So that's a hefty wish list.
Yeah.
Yeah. What do you think as far as the international front and his, he said he feels like he could take care of the Ukraine and Russian war within 24 hours?
I hope that's true. I don't know how.
No,
right.
I
mean, you know,
or it would have been done.
24.
Right.
Well, would it? I mean, you know, it didn't pop off until he left office. And they felt emboldened to do that.
Did you see that he called for a ceasefire on Ukraine this last weekend?
I did.
And that possible U.S. withdrawal from NATO. So we'll see. You know, in the meantime, another $1 billion has been sent to the Ukraine in the form of weapons. So, yeah, it's.
I don't agree with that at all either.
Well,
but
it's moving forward as is, and how he plans to undo all that and fix it in the meantime, I don't know. I think he's really confident of his negotiation skills, and who knows what kind of sideline conversations he's had the last 4 years.
True.
And he has alluded to the fact that there has been communication, but he's not talking about to the extent. So, what about the him talking about pardoning those January 6th rioters? How do you feel about that, Matthew?
You know, I don't know what you know, who was charged with what or what's on that list.
Actually, quite a few people.
Yeah. No, I know it's a long list. Frankly, going back to that, I don't know how that happened in the first place. I think those poor guys at the Capitol Police were left understaffed. I don't,
right, and
you know,
I don't want to debate that day necessarily,
right.
But those that, I mean, in my research, at least 645 defendants have been sentenced to incarceration, ranging from a few days to up to 22 years in prison. That's a lot of people.
Yeah. And depending on what you know they did, that's some of that is maybe well deserved. You know, breaking into offices, taking, you know, computers or software that had access to stuff that it could affect national
on
security.
People's desks. I mean, yeah, it was ridiculous.
Yeah.
So, I mean, how do you feel, given your employment as a police officer? How do you feel about pardoning those who were openly, you know, said that they were guilty, and, you know, like the Proud Boys, the leaders and whatnot?
I think a lot of those folks on that list probably well deserve some prison time.
Okay. Because he's been saying that it was unjust. It was an unjust system that found them guilty, and that they were really tough on them. But I think he was starting to get some pushback from supporters. So he's kind of dialed that down a little bit, saying, well, we'd have to look at it on a one-by-one basis. And I was like, okay.
And I don't know what, you know... That too. What's your marker for that? I mean, that's a brand new crime kind of in this century. It's not like we can compare it with the last 5, you know, vandalisms or whatever. You know what I mean? That's a pretty unique and singular
It was
event.
A treasonous act, though.
Yeah.
I mean,
no, that's
treason's
not. Yeah.
treason. I mean,
but well, it's like, you know, getting your house on the market, getting comps for your house. It's like, is there something to measure it against? Like, I don't know. Is 22 years? It may be reasonable. Like, I don't know what that guy got charged with, but that might be well deserved.
Seditious conspiracy, but Trump is saying that gentleman Tario was treated horribly.
I'm not familiar with him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I didn't follow the trials of those either.
Yeah.
Now, you talked about, you referenced the climate. He wants to gut President Biden's climate subsidies and resume energy exploration. And he said, drill, 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 right? And we talked about that in the last episode. He is promising to reduce our energy prices in half within the first year.
That would be impressive.
Right, but it's really easy to make these big sweeping claims like I can end this, the Ukrainian-Russian war, and I can reduce, our energy costs by 50% within a year. Then why didn't he do that before?
Well,
because that's what everyone was saying about Kamala. Well, she's making all these promises that if you vote for me for president, like, why haven't you done it as vice president? Okay, so I'm going to say the same to him, about him.
You can say that about every campaign promise.
Well,
I mean, you folks still got your student loans, right? I mean,
well, we talked about that too, but I don't, because I've
but yeah, you worked it off.
I did work it off. Okay. So anyway, and he wants to really explore fracking more. And anyway, so basically just undo everything that has anything to do with the what he calls it the Green New Scam or the Green New Deal. So whatever.
Depending on what that's for, I'm all for preserving nature and preserving, I certainly don't want them drilling oil in Yellowstone or anything like that. But if we do have resources here that we can tap into that would help us get out of this economic plunge, now might be a good time to open those up or to use those again without destroying national parks.
Well, how
and
do you
selling
do that?
Selling Mount Rushmore to.
But where they do all this mineral and oil exploration, cancer rates are so high in those areas throughout the country. I mean, I don't know.
Drilling for oil? I didn't know that. I didn't know.
Just all of the refining and things like
Ideally, we use other countries' resources. I'm all for that. I'm all for buying that from other countries. But if it's got us in a situation where people can't afford food, desperate times.
Are we in desperate times?
Are we? I don't know.
I don't know,
pretty
everyone.
close.
Are we?
Pretty close.
Against what standard?
10 years ago?
Oh, geez. Okay. What about his promise of deporting 1 million undocumented individuals per year? So that would be a total of 4 million. And as we've talked about the undocumented, the border crisis, we talked about in another episode, and President Obama is still on record the president who deported the most, around 3 million. It depends what source you look at, but I'd say about 3 million. And that was, I think that was in both of his terms. Was it both of his terms?
I don't know if it was overall, but
yeah,
but it's
I think it was for both of his terms. And then Trump, when he was president the first time, deported about 1.5 million. So now he's pledging to do 1 million every year. So that'd be 4 million. How do you feel about that? That makes me more than pause.
Well, it's a situation that could have been avoided, frankly, had we not gone soft on that and encouraged folks to just stroll in and hand out money. What are we not? Do we not have 5-star hotels in New York that are being paid for by the government, by your tax dollars?
Well, that I don't know.
To house and feed folks. We are, absolutely. We've got these.
Are they undocumented or are they refugees?
Well, fine line, I guess. Everybody claims that, right? I mean, you can claim.
Well, no,
that.
but I mean, a refugee status you do get certain benefits for 6 months.
But sure, but a refugee is supposed to go to the next bordering country, which is not America. Most of these folks.
Well, we still resettle refugees here.
Okay.
I mean, through Catholic charities.
At record amounts, though, like this, do we buy 5-star hotels
Well, I know in this community, a lot of the motels have become housing because we don't have enough affordable housing.
This could have been avoided,
community.
Though.
Yeah, so I don't know about the 5-star hotels in New York City, but so people, even in my, I work in healthcare, and we provide healthcare to to everyone, right? As is any other healthcare provider is to do. You don't turn away anyone who needs help, some kind of medical assistance. And what happens when
how's that going? Who's doing the cost share on that? Who's paying for that? Somebody's paying for that.
Well, we don't provide free healthcare, so people do pay for it. We there's lots of different ways people can pay for it.
There's ways to shuffle the card, yeah, but a lot of it's being paid for by taxpayers. A lot of it is taxpayer money, and
not at my federally qualified health center. However, we don't. It's not free health care. No, we don't.
I know it's not free health care.
We're not Matthew 25.
But somebody, at the end of the day, somebody is paying for that. And I'm not saying we should deny anybody health care. I'm not arguing that. But these massive numbers of folks that rolled in, obviously that's going to take a hit on somebody's business, somebody's bottom line, somebody's charity.
So question. Mm-hmm. So the American Immigration Council is estimating that this is going to cost billions of dollars for Trump to implement his deportation plan. From finishing the wall to the sheer amount of sweat equity it's going to take to get that many people deported. I mean, that's not an easy process, right? First of all, billions. Do you want your tax dollars to go to that?
The cost. I don't know that I would spend my tax dollars on that per se.
Well, the money's going to come from somewhere.
But I'm fascinated that now it's an issue, and it wasn't during the Obama years. No, it was done quietly, and nobody really had issue with it.
Well, yeah, in fairness, but that was $3 million in 8 years. This is $4 million in 4 years. So that money's coming from somewhere.
It's still the same action, though. I mean, it's still the same. Is it the number that bothers folks? I mean, if it's two people. If it's two families, if it's 20, you know what I mean? Like it's either it's a fair act or it's not, and it should be consistent.
So there are three things about this that bother me. And I already said, where's this money going to come from? We all know where that's going to come from. It's going to come from us. The economic impact of the industries that employ undocumented individuals. So be construction, hospitality, agriculture, restaurant industry. I know we have several well-known businesses in this community that employ undocumented workers and have for years. What happens when, and my third thing, which is related to that, my third concern is the migrant workers that come here seasonally, that come here legally, usually from Central South America, they are harvesting food crops for us. Tomatoes in our Taco Bell tacos.
But you said it came here legally.
They come here, but he's talked about rescinding their migrant status. Now that's a legal status.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, okay, so if you're going to deport, borrowing from his drill, and all these industries are going to be hit really hard, and then you're also going to make it.
Well, all these industries that have been skirting the law for so long, and all these industries who don't want to pay a citizen's wage, it's slave labor. Let's not sugarcoat that.
Oh no,
it's slave labor.
I don't disagree.
I feel really sorry for X company that's been,
But we're talking a lot of industries here, Matthew.
Yes, we are. But
and how's that going to? We know what that's going to do for us at the cash register. Everything is going to cost more money. Everything's going to cost more money.
God forbid these companies have to pay a living wage.
Well, amen. But to also revoke the status of someone who's here legally for the sole purpose of harvesting crops, and then they go back home, because
I think that's a totally different topic, though.
But that's what's being lumped in this conversation, and the whole what a lot of the pundits are saying is, he's thinking this will free up jobs for other Americans who will want them. Do you know anyone who's going to pick?
I don't know that any, but that's the thing. Like these companies will be forced to pay a living wage. I mean, it's scandalous what they're doing to these poor folks when they get here.
Oh, I agree.
That's criminal.
You and I have both known individuals that.
And I want to go on record first and say I think that becoming a legal citizen should be very easy. I would like to see that whole process streamlined, so that this
Yeah, and
really
we've
isn't
talked
an
about that
issue.
before. Yeah,
I'm down for making it a very simple process, and I think you could do that. This should not take tens of thousands of dollars and a decade to do.
I haven't seen, and I'm sure it's out there. I just haven't seen it in what I've read. Any discussion about which was discussed under Biden's administration is let's get them naturalized, those that will come forward, right? I haven't seen any conversation about that. I think the big push is to deport. Anyway, so it's the money, it's the money that it's going to cost to make this happen on his agenda, and then the economic impact that's going to have for us. Our tax dollars are going to go to that, and then we're going to be paying higher prices, which I think we're all pretty fed up with inflationary prices at the grocery store and beyond, right? I don't see how that's going to get any better if he were to be successful in getting this going right away, which it might take a year or two to get this off the ground. I don't know.
Yeah,
I mean, he
sure.
can crack down on the borders. People are still going to find their way here.
Yeah, and you can say what you want, but it is quite an undertaking.
Yeah,
I think it's a matter of just
huge.
So,
also too, he's working on things right now as far as converting 50,000 government positions, like civil servants, and then so either putting his own people in those positions or eliminating those positions. So there are a lot of individuals in DC and beyond that are very, very worried about, I've been working this job forever and it's supposed to be a nonpartisan situation. I mean, it's not like he's looking, these jobs are not his cabinet positions, right?
Mm-hmm.
These are individuals who have, they're not just political appointees. And I don't understand how explain to me, Matthew, how Republicans are okay with that. Because
I think a lot of business people are okay with that. Sometimes you have to make a change. I mean, some of these systems are just out of whack. Just like FDA,
the bureaucracy,
for example.
yeah.
Oh my God, FDA. You've got the big pharma. You've got your medical conglomerates. You've got doctors who aren't allowed to prescribe a $30 generic when they're forced to prescribe a $1,500 pill. All that shit needs to end.
Okay.
I mean, it needs to end. And if you've got to gut it from the top down, so be it. So I'm looking forward to the change. I'm very curious, and I know RFK. I think he's done a lot of research on who's who in DC. And I think he has quite a bit of knowledge. I'm looking forward to see what he recommends.
But do you think, and think if the election would have gone another way and Kamala would have, appointed partisan loyalists and
I don't know that's who's getting.
But that's what's happening is that he's finding those who will be loyal to him and appointing them into these positions and dissolving these others or replacing departments with this idea. And I mean, it just, you're messing with people's lives
Mm-hmm.
and their livelihoods, and they've got families. And I don't know. I think you're being a little glib about this here, Matthew. I mean, that's a lot of people, a lot of jobs, and a lot of people that's going to impact.
But if your bank wasn't performing, if your stockholders weren't happy, you would get a new bank president. You'd get a new
Yeah, but
VP.
what if this is a middle management type of situation? I mean, these aren't all like C-suite individuals.
I don't know.
Like,
I don't know. I don't know the middle
find
management guy that's
I find it concerning. Okay, so no explanation?
I think it's performance based.
Before,
I mean, really.
I wouldn't want to be in that HR.
Well, really, if you're running any other company, people wouldn't bat an eye at this. But it's you've got your government job you've had for X amount of years, and it's not doing what it should be doing.
Mm-hmm.
It's time to change.
So what about, we talked about his criminal charges. Now we know the classified documents and election interference, that's been dropped. Of course, he was found liable of sexual abuse to E. Jean Carroll, who grew up in Fort Wayne or was from Fort Wayne.
I'm not sure.
Oh, I think yeah.
Okay.
Back in May of 2023, and then the hush money or the falsifying business records. I think I saw as of just a week and a half ago, the judge postponed his sentencing for the guilty verdicts. So, and then of course, Trump is saying he's going to try to vacate his convictions. So, all that being said, he has been found guilty of sexual abuse and assault, or I think it was harassment too, or libel. I'm sorry. And we've talked it originally 91 criminal charges, right? Some of those may actually stick.
Mm-hmm.
Or they won't. Do you find that problematic? And I know we've talked about this.
Yeah,
in other contexts. Do you find
absolutely.
it problematic that we will have a standing president, possibly go to trial again?
Yeah, that's absolutely a problem.
Okay. Do you want to expand on that?
No, I don't. I mean, that's.
It's embarrassing.
It's a unique
honestly.
situation. Yeah.
It's really, really embarrassing.
But
I just. I always say I think we could have done better.
Well, had both parties done better.
Okay, so that's that's a great segue. Okay, so and that's actually why I wanted to have this conversation for our next episode, because going forward, there've been a lot of disgruntled people on my side of the aisle. A lot of angry people, and the vitriol, which I find, I just find disgusting. I don't like it when it comes from either. I don't like
wackos on both sides.
Well, right. I don't like extremism. I never have, and I think that, again, that's why you and I can get along and navigate these conversations, because we're both fairly moderate on the essential things.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's some things we don't agree on, and you've all heard that. But what happened, and we talked about this in the last episode too, a little bit, because it was still really, really fresh, the election results and whatnot. As far as I'm not speaking on behalf of the Democratic Party, but I'm a social scientist. I'm a proud Democrat, and I've read a lot, what the heck happened here. I don't think a lot of this or all of this applies just to us. I'm not taking away we've got more Republican majority in the House and the Senate, and we have more Republican governors than we do Democratic governors, right? Mm-hmm. It was a red, as we've said before, a red wave, right? And in that red wave, Trump and his supporters were able to gain, they connected with the working class far better than the Democratic Party did. And the irony, Democrats, this, right? The irony is that we've long touted us being the party of the working, the class, right?
Mm-hmm.
The unions and whatnot. But that connection, I'm not saying the Democrats or the Democratic Party doesn't have relationships with unions, but it has changed. I've seen it change too in the last 7 years. The relationship between the Democratic Party and some of the unions we have in the area. How did that happen? We did not connect with those voters like Trump did. And it's, you're like, yeah, I know, Melissa.
No, right, yeah.
and that's we've talked, I think we talked about this on our first or second episodes when we launched this podcast, that's why I'm a Democrat, because that's how I identify, as working, middle class, Anyway, I'm not going to go into that again. It's just, but we missed that mark. We missed who we are.
Yeah.
Or who we've touted to be.
And I think, I saw how it fell apart. I think had they not tried to push Biden into running again, I think you guys would have had a better shot. I think,
I agree.
Putting him up there was, folks could see he was in his decline. He had a long, prosperous career as a politician.
He really did.
but folks could see the end coming. You know, they could see that decline, and that maybe, you know, not fit for office is harsh, but maybe, you know, he wasn't at his top game, and then for her to slide in the way she did was,
she wasn't a snake.
I mean, well, no, but had you guys had a proper, you know,
vetting,
yeah, well, or a primary.
Right.
You might have had somebody different. You might have had a better shot at it. It was kind of, yeah. I mean, it just came across. It was a weird play. It was a weird play, and I think that I do think the Democrats a lot now. At least what I watch, the Democratic Party now is less about the worker and more about feeling good about ourselves. And what's, you know, what's the Uber, you know, PC, you know.
So is that what you think of when you look at me?
No, but I mean, like in general, when you see it on the internet, you know, you get your PC,
tree huggers,
diversity hire, the whole, you know, that's the whole. I think people are just sick of that. It's business. It's a business. We're running a business, and he's a businessman. And when asked the tough questions, he had answers. Now, he might have been full of shit. He might not be able to pull half of it off, but he had answers. I didn't hear the same. I came from a middle-class family, and my grandmother had a grocery store story.
That really bothered you. You mentioned that last time.
Every time there was a hard question.
Oh, geez.
That was the go-to answer.
Okay. So, again, from all my reading, a lot of folks feel like he won because his digital strategy was more on point than with Democrats. Now, I can only speak from personal experience. I was never left alone. My phone was going off all the time. You know, emails and advertisements, even when you're watching a movie on Hulu, you know, it was everywhere, and it was both, right? So I don't know what the story is behind the digital strategy unless he just did a deeper dive, and maybe, like we talked about before, maybe there was more investment in the digital for the rural areas because he got the rural vote, right? And then he got the Latino vote, which and there's going to be a big push in the Democratic Party. You know, we identify with the working class and with minorities who often compose the working class, right? That how did we lose the Latino voters, right? And we talked about that in the last episode. Democrats are going to hang their hats on the fact that not all Latinos support banning abortion or want to kill the ACA, like, you know, he's talked about doing, and not all Latinos are going to be supportive of the mass deportations. But their biggest concern was the economy, and they saw him as their personal savior for, you know, turning the economy around. Mm-hmm. So, you know, I don't know if just targeting Latinos is really where the Democratic Party needs to go. I personally think we need to just get back to our roots. And I don't mean in a tree hugging way. I mean, but we really need to connect with people on a real level. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Like I can't tell you how many people are like, I don't want to knock doors. I don't want to knock doors. Well, in this community, when you're a Democrat, you have to knock doors. You know, is it fun? No. But you need that engagement with people to show them who you are. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's how I got, and we've talked about this before, that's how I got crossover votes. I had Republicans vote for me, you know, because I knocked on their door and I found out what was important to them. I tried to connect. I'm only one person, and I know you connect with voters too as a city councilman. I just think, you know, I'm not saying we can talk to everyone, mm-hmm. you know, but I really think each of the local parties, the county parties throughout the country on the Democratic side really needs to just look at themselves in the mirror and say, are we connecting with one another? Because the infighting you're going to have that in any group. Right.
Well, yeah,
but it is real and it's ridiculous, and it's continued here, without airing of the dirty laundry, it's continued here post-election, mm-hmm. and to the point where I was talking to a friend the other day. It's just like we're both kind of just stepping back, and I'm no less a Democrat, even though my personal world is being run by Republicans at this point. And yeah, that's
Well, and on a local
a
level,
nervous laughter there.
on a local level, it's not quite as polarizing because you can pick an issue that you're, one or two issues that you can agree with somebody on, and yeah, this is what I would like to see happen to our city. This is what I would like to have done within Allen County. That's a little easier to answer to than the numerous topics that the president has to answer to. You've got to be on board with so many things. For example, as a city councilman, I keep getting these envelopes for Right to Life in my mailbox, and it's one of those things that like I don't weigh in on that. So that
is
doesn't
not something
really
you discuss.
affect
Yeah.
my city council race.
Right.
Because we're not going to,
Legislate abortion.
legislate
Yeah.
against that or for
Right.
that in
Right.
New Haven.
Right.
So I think it's much easier. I guess the lower you get in the totem pole, or the more local you get. I think is
Right.
a better way to put it.
Yeah.
More local you get, I think the
Thank
easier
you.
it
That's
is,
a little
but-
more politically
right,
correct.
absolutely.
You knew I'd have to say something about that.
But no, the bigger area you cover, the more issues you've got to
Right.
have people agree on, and I think that's where it really gets muddied up.
Okay. So I've heard from fellow Democrats, or been questioned, why aren't you more angry? And it's, well, where's that going to get me?
Yeah.
Well, first of all, like we said before, we've had a Trump presidency. He's more emboldened now. He seems to be more aggressive, but it's really easy to speak into a microphone and make all those promises like you're saying. We'll see what actually happens. Are things going to get worse? We don't have that crystal ball, right? And we can only go by what he's saying and then the people he puts in place to try to move those initiatives forward.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's going to take him a lot longer than he thinks.
Yeah, and there is going to be pushback. There'll be massive pushback. But he was one of the first to admit. He said, I didn't know what was going on in my first term. He said in one interview, he said, I really didn't think I was going to win. And I did not know. He said, going into it, he said, first couple of years, he said, I did not know what to expect.
Right.
So I kept a lot of people that I shouldn't have kept. I listened to a lot of people I shouldn't have listened to.
Mm-hmm.
And I think now with this 4 years of experience and then taking that pause and just watching the game being played, from a distance, I think now he's going to be more prepared, better prepared to do what to implement things he wants to implement.
Did you see the look I just gave the audience? Okay. But he still loves me. So I'm not angry. And, and I think we've talked about this maybe personally, like just unfriended some individuals on my social media because I've never just had a hissy fit on social media. I don't use it to vent. I try to share good things or thought-provoking things. I mean, sometimes I'll have political posts, but it's never in the spirit of to be ugly or, it's to get people to think, right?
Yes.
And I just, it's just shameful. It's just shameful that what people on both sides of the aisle, how they've responded before and after the election. And I don't want that in my world. So I've decided, not decided, I'm just going to continue because people are like, well, are you going to run for office again? What are you going to do? What are you going to, I'm like, I'm going to continue doing what I've always done. And so this is my big plug. It's the end of the year. We're in the holiday season, lots of different holidays, right? To be inclusive is, I love to volunteer, and volunteerism looks differently depending on where you feel called to go. They estimate about 61 million people volunteer annually, which is about a quarter of all Americans. I think that's pretty darn cool. We have over 3,000 nonprofits in this community, from the Parkview, which is our largest employer, to educational institutions, our churches, and then we've got, food banks, we've got foundations, arts and culture, youth development, business community development. We have lots of nonprofits.
Fraternal Order of Police.
Fraternal Order of Police, that's right.
Freemasons.
Okay, let's not talk about that right now.
Also a charity.
Well, We should talk about those associations at a future episode.
Yeah,
Because
absolutely.
I watched a really thought-provoking documentary on the Freemasons, and
Nice,
I thought
nice.
very, very differently.
Would love
Anyway,
to hear about that.
yeah, I'm sure you would. But seriously, though, you don't have to hold a political position. And this is coming from a person who's ran 3 times and lost 3 times, right? But I learned every time I did, I learned more about my community, and it just made me even want to invest more. That don't be angry, do something for your community. And I'm being very serious about that. It's really easy to sit behind, to be a keyboard warrior. Well, go be a warrior out on the streets. And I don't mean being a vigilante or violent, right? I mean, go do some good. Go do, and people are like, I just don't know what I'm going to do for the next 4 years. I know what you can do. You can invest in your community. You may not have the money, but you might have the time. If you've got an hour, you can go work at a food bank on a Saturday morning, or you can go teach children or adults how to read. It really, or you can rock babies at Parkview. I'm not going to be that person who shouts from the rooftop ugly things, if you will, especially about how the election went down. I am going to shout from the rooftop right now, go volunteer and invest in your community. I'm on 2 boards. I'm on the Legacy Joint Funding Committee. And I'm always asked to do, to help with this, and that. And if I have the time, I'm going to do it. And that's how I can try to make a difference. And it's going to give me a sense of purpose, or I'm just going to become one of those keyboard warriors. And that's not what I want.
Yeah, that's not going to get any of us anywhere.
It gets you nowhere.
And now's the time folks are still emotional about this.
Very much so.
Time to step out of the emotional and step into the intellectual.
So what are your words of advice for listeners, followers?
Well, that sounds great. I mean, really, that's
You're going to piggyback on this Democrat?
Well, how are you? How can you argue that? I mean,
Yeah. Well, you volunteer like crazy too.
Think globally, act locally. That vibe from back in the day. I do a lot of volunteering too.
You do
a lot of time. But it's good. It's good. And like you said, there's everything from, fostering kids to go.
There's so much.
Go petting a dog at the if cats are your thing.
SPCA
go pet a cat at the SPCA for an hour. Do something.
Yeah.
But yeah, don't just sit at home and gripe on Facebook.
Yeah, I know. Well, it's so easy to do. Mm-hmm. Put your money where your mouth is, or just put your your hands and your brain to work.
Yeah.
It really, you can still contribute and do good, and I don't know. I don't.
And if you see a better candidate, if you can't get out of the political mindset, you're so angry about it. You see a different candidate, better candidate, go work for him. Go stuff envelopes.
My concern is that if people don't work through their grief, because that's really what they're doing. They're in that anger phase, right? Like, if they don't work through their grief, what's that going to do? What is that going to do for the Democratic Party?
Well, anybody really. I mean, if you look back, so if you go back, and this is just American history, folks, in action. People are mad about stuff all the way
Mr.
back
History.
in the day.
Well,
really, I mean, the Boston Tea Party was fought over 3%, right? I mean, 3%. We ransacked a boat over a 3% tax. Now they're gladly picking your pocket for 33%. Nobody says anything. You're happy to get that return at the end of the year if you get it. When I went to the Ford Museum, I think one of the most beloved presidents in American history was probably Abraham Lincoln, right? I think we all agree Abraham Lincoln's right up there.
At least in the top 3 or 4, definitely, if not number 1.
You should go read all the hate mail.
Oh, I know.
They had about him at the Ford Museum. I mean, it's fascinating how even throughout the times where you think everybody would be on board with hey, this was a great thing. This guy did wonderful things. Yeah, there's still people complaining.
Well, and he went on the record, too, talking about African Americans that, right, he very much anti-slavery, but they were very much not equals either.
No, he was not as PC as folks paint him to be. But I guess my point is, though,
politically correct, or just
there's
the humanitarian that...
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not as polished as this is not our darkest hour by any means. Like folks are painting it to be. I mean, it's a change.
So for the gloom and doom Democrats, if this is not our darkest hour,
Yeah, I mean,
what's your
come
advice
on.
to them?
Work harder next time.
Oh my goodness.
Find a better candidate.
Or just invest in your community and volunteer.
We'll go with that.
We'll go with that. Any other?
No, this was good. This
That's
was
what
good.
This is a good conversation.
good
All
wrap.
right. Happy holidays, whatever holidays you celebrate.
Absolutely.
And I look forward to next year with this fella.
Yep, it'll be good times.
All right. Take care, everyone. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks. The opinions and views expressed on Who's Right, What's Left are Matt and Melissa's solely. They are not necessarily the views of the Republican Party, the Democratic Party, or either of the participants' employers. We'd like to thank our production team at Influencer.tv. For more information on how to start your own podcast, check them out at Influencer.tv.
And don't forget, you can like us on Facebook and Instagram. And you can listen and leave your 5-star review and share on both Apple and Spotify. And don't forget to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel.
These are important, critical conversations we all need to have with each other for the future of our country. Remember to be polite, make it fun, and we can all agree to disagree.